My name is Stephenson. I'm the design director for McLaren Automotive. Our fourth year here at Pebble Beach. It's really one of the destinations that you have to be at if you're in the automotive business, of course. And it always just gets better and better. It's been here forever. One of the most historical concours events in the world. But this is it. When you come here to Pebble Beach, it really makes a real big statement about being here and about being an important company in the automotive sector. And I think kind of people that come here are the ones that are really into the cars and they know the history. And so being that McLaren is a lot more well known for being a racing car company, evolving into an automotive company, it is a big thing, an important factor for us to be here, to be present. P1 is a really different animal. I mean, when you do a car like a P1, it's really like you're at the very extreme end of the segment where you're designing things that aren't usually seen in the normal car business. You're really pushing all the limits. Anything is possible, basically. You just have to have the right kind of team involved with it. And you really are looking to raise the level and change the game. So with the P1, it was all about finding a real new identity to McLaren almost, in the sense that if you're doing racing cars, you want to really interpret that as a race car for the road. So a lot of that technology that we pick up through Formula One, and that might even be illegal even, we're absolutely able to use that for the road cars. And we're making cars that theoretically could be illegal on a track if it was racing, but they do give us a good advantage on the road car side of it. In terms of what's my favorite feature, that's really a tough question to answer, because these cars are so much in detail. The kind of concentration you put into every part of the car makes every part your favorite. Maybe if I had to pick a single element on the car, it would be in general the whole design language of being shrink wrapped, which means pretty much we're going away from that concept of trying to make the car look absolutely stunningly sensual and fun to wash. You know, this is more about reducing the amount of visual weight you put into a car. Anything that looks light usually tends to be light. So we've come into this way of defining McLaren's design language as something we refer to as shrink wrapping, which means reduce it, pull it very tight against the hard points. And that kind of gives it a very unique and purposeful look. So I think as a main proud point on the McLaren design side is really being able to introduce something that looks a very unique design language for the company and immediately identifiable obviously as McLaren. You know, most designers, they kind of look outwards for inspiration. At McLaren, we're kind of lucky that we can actually look inwards towards our racing side for inspiration. But apart from that, this is not only just a racing car, you actually have to sell it to somebody and get them to part with a lot of hard-earned cash to buy it. So there has to be a bit of an emotional appeal or emotional attraction to the customer. The course design can do that. And although we're trying to do the most purposeful design we can do and add maybe elements of beauty later, there are quite a few elements on the car itself that do make it go fast and do make it very attractive, and that's a lot of it's influenced by what I call biomimicry. It's a well-known term, but in terms of design, like I said, pretty much anything's possible, but what you want to do is design for purpose. And if you look into the natural world, everything that's designed, so to speak, in the natural world is actually for purpose. It's that way because it has to be that way. It's much more effective and long-lasting and timeless. So a lot of the influence does come from nature on our cars, simply because it works, not because it's beautiful or anything like that, but it does give us a slight advantage when it comes to design. Fast animals have very common traits. They're very slick, sleek, very lightweight, and very strong, agile. And if you can incorporate that kind of design feeling into the car, which is what we're doing with shrink wrapping the car, you tend to make cars that are fast even from the outside just looking at them. And then of course if you want to make it look beautiful, that's just a little bit of fine tuning that comes in at the end of the program where you have to give it sort of a human touch to it. And that's a little bit of also the holy grail of design, is to make the car not only just beautiful to look at, but be just as equally very good at performing. Well, the connection between all our cars here is a bit difficult to line them up as points, because McLaren really doesn't have that much of a history in terms of road car design. We did the iconic F4 back in the mid-90s, and that stayed pretty much the supercar throughout the rest of the last century and into this century even. We've decade, obviously. But in terms of trying to make a connection between all of them, there isn't really that much of a common design language. That's what we're here for now, is try to establish what the future of McLarens are going to look like in terms of aesthetics, I guess. But being the F1, being as effective as it was designed without any compromises. Maybe the spirit of continuing that is what you see in the P1. So instead of trying to make a pure follow-up to the F1 in the P1, we've basically taken that idea of being the very best car we can do at that very stage time in the development of supercars. So as the F1 was the best car when it came out in terms of performance and just exhilaration, the P1 is sort of a follow-up on that, where we're trying to make the absolute cutting-edge hypercar. So we're taking it a couple notches higher. I mean, even our 12C would today beat the technology and the performance of the F1. So that's saying quite a bit, but the P1 actually does it, trumps that one even in spades. So it's all about using the very latest technology that you can pull in from the racing world. So we're using hybrid now. Some purists say isn't the right thing, but of course, you know, you have to move on. You either evolve or you die. So I think the whole future is moving towards efficiency and lightweight and more features within the car without adding weight, making cars much more safe and much more enjoyable to drive. So I think at the top of the list right now has to be the P1, because we've made it basically an uncompromised vehicle. It's very tame, very easy to drive on the road, but then again on the track it's absolutely a beast. And so it's that Jekyll and Hyde that you can get both worlds combined, and you're absolutely the best of each one. McLaren obviously is a different company in terms of competition, because, I mean, not that we disrespect the competition, but a lot of customers who buy into the other brands are buying it because of their status already that's been developed over many, many years. We're a brand new company. We don't really have much of a history per se in terms of what we're doing now. So, you know, just as famous as Coca-Cola, these other brands can base their sales off of people who aspire. You know, they come into that game where they start wanting to move over into a supercar market, and the established brands are always going to have a slight advantage. But being the new kid on the block is possibly even bigger advantage for us, because if we come in and do the job right and we can knock them off the perch, then it really says a lot more from McLaren coming in and being able to, you know, take the big boys head on. And of course, if you make a big impression the first time out, being the first impression, that's a lasting impression, and that keeps your other cars coming along with you. So it's very important that P1 does a good job for us. 12C is already doing a great job, but that sort of establishes the reputation of McLaren that we're in there to win and not just compete. So we're basically playing in our own sandbox, you know, at our own moment right now, and looking to set our own targets, which are as high as any target you set. And we're actually achieving it, which is a great thing internally for all of us. Well, to design a car like P1 is not, in a normal company it would never work, simply because to the limits that you have to go to design a P1 are actually not the normal things that you would do within a car company. A car company is too restricted in their marketing and their financial side. Our guys are a little bit inexperienced on that side, so we're able to push the limits a little bit and surprise them. A lot of things that you see on P1 with a normal car company would never flown. We've got things like the door panel, which is probably the most complicated door ever produced. It's made out of about 15 different panels put together. And a normal car company would say, well, why don't you just put one single panel over top of it? And as you can see, the side of the P1 is almost like an exoskeleton. It's actually taking material away and showing the inside. And that just reduces weight. Normal car company would have thought we were nuts and closed the idea down right when we suggested it. But, I mean, there are so many elements, like trying to move the exhaust super low so that we can get an extremely low rear end on the car. It's not a styling thing, it's actually a purpose aerodynamics-driven feature on the car, and it helps it. So when you design a car like the P1, your first sketch is usually your best one, because it's one where you don't hold back. You're being as crazy and as creative as you can be. So you do that, and lucky enough, our development cycles at McLaren are half of any other company. We're down to between 12 months and 18 months to fully develop a car. So we're basically turning sketches out that become production cars in 2 months, which is ridiculous. It usually takes 1 to 2 years. So the good thing is we can get everybody who's with us, the 7 execs who control purchasing and marketing, engineering, all those together in one group. Focus on that goal and just go forth and do it. Don't get cold feet and don't question the targets, and we're pretty much all really crazy car guys in the first place. So, you know, if you can dream it, you can make it. And P1, I think, is the very first project in the world where guys who saw it at a motor show actually believed it was a concept car, and in fact it was the real car. That just doesn't happen. So many times you see a concept car and the real car is pretty much a disappointment because it doesn't really reflect faithfully the concept car. With this car, we stretched it so far into the future when we were designing, we were able to keep hold of those values, and it basically became a concept car turned into a real car without any changes at all. So it really goes to show you that anybody who complains about legislation being a hindrance to doing beautiful, exciting, new, revolutionary cars is really not speaking the truth, because I think you can really still use that as a challenge to come up with a lot of newer solutions and different ways of doing something, sort of taking the silver lining out of it and making something really spectacular out of it that actually improves the whole design process, I guess. So worked fast, you know, worked to incredible deadlines, and those first thoughts and dreams are usually the most creative and the best stories in the first place.